Level design is a hugely important section of game design. Level design refers to the design of the level where the player will actually play in the game. A game may be composed of one or more levels, often separated by cinematics, ads, or in-app purchase opportunities. I'm here on MadeWithUnity.com, and I'm going to take a look at some different games and analyze a bit of their levels and how they're constructed. I'll start out by searching and looking in the categories. What we'll see is that different categories of games and different genres dictate different designs needed in the levels. I'll go into sports to start. In sports, I'll take a look at 24 Seconds Basketball. What we're seeing here in 24 Seconds Basketball is that the game level is defined as the basketball court, as we'd expect. That is, it's a finite, bounded area of a basketball court, and instead there's a time mechanic here governing the gameplay. The level, then, is finite and bounded, really a basketball court in size, bounded by wooden walls, effectively keeping the player from seeing anything else besides the basketball court. The design of the level, then, is dictated by the basketball court, with a basket at either end and floor markings defining out of bounds, the free throw line, and so on. Back here in the search field, then, I'm going to look at puzzles, as these have a markedly different design of their levels. In puzzles, I'll look at Eraser. It's a 2D physics platformer puzzle. What we're seeing then is that games will often have different mechanics combining to influence their level design. We can see here in this 2D game that it's got a more or less contiguous background, the grid with the gears on it, and that overlaid on this are 2D elements, different platformers and elements that we need to interact with. What we'll often see is that games like this are endless runners, that this kind of game may simply go on forever and have procedurally generated pieces. In this case, the level design elements are here to facilitate the game mechanic, not necessarily for free-form exploration, as much as problem solving in the context of that puzzle using the game mechanics in the 2D space the game is designed in. Placement of elements then in the level doesn't correspond to real-world placement as much as placement for a specific mechanic, in this case a jump from a spring platform. What we'll also see here is that the background really fills what's going on, but isn't a part of the game necessarily. That it's this blue grid, and behind it is nothing. In fact, we're not seeing much of the world, but for our purposes in this level, this is all we need to see. That is, all we need to worry about are the different elements we're interacting and erasing with, and the background is simply there to give us something behind instead of a blank. In a marked contrast to the 2D puzzle platformer of Eraser is Superhot. Superhot is a first-person 3D game played in an abstracted, stylized world of whites and grays with red characters. What we're seeing here is that the level design is dictated by the mechanics of the game. Cover mechanics, allowing the player to duck behind a column, for example. In this case, in this 3D world, lighting plays a huge part of the level design, leading the player down halls, giving us rhythm between light and dark, and exposing characters possibly. We can see in this shot that the level design, the cars placed and the buildings, are here to block line of sight and facilitate a cover mechanic again. In Superhot, we're seeing that the level design, the placement of objects and the way it's lit, is there for the action going on and to allow the key game mechanics to really be played effectively. Game levels can either be completely designed at once or procedural, and this again depends on the nature of the game and the game mechanic. Subway Surfers is a terrific example of a procedural level in an endless runner. What this means is that we are continually running in the game, always moving forward along a more or less linear level. In an endless runner such as Subway Surfer, we have a relatively small kit of parts used to procedurally generate the level. There's always a bounding or sidewall condition. There's an overhead series of wires that runs, well, forever in the endless runner, as well as a corresponding system of tracks. These more or less continue endlessly through the level, and then are punctuated by procedurally placed trains, power-ups such as this jetpack, and coins. In a level design such as this, we're seeing that the level and the obstacles in it are here to test the player's reflexes as speed increases. This is different from a game where we may stop and start like Superhot. It's also different from a puzzle platformer like Eraser, where we may contemplate different actions in here, pausing occasionally or going backward and forward within our level. There are many different genres or game types out there, and each one has a different level design. Again, the level design should reinforce the core mechanics and goals of the game and facilitate the game play. Once you've got the level design down and the layout, you can start to think about the artistic look of the level and using lighting or color to lead the player where you want them to go. I've opened up the Zombie Toys game design document, and I'll take a quick look at the level design for our single Zombie Toys level. What we're seeing here is that our level is finite and bounded. That is, the level exists as the square room with the two walls we'll see, and a floor with a black edge. For us then, the entire world is this room. We don't see the ceiling, and we don't see outside of the room. It's implied then that there's a window, as shown by the light on the floor, but really, the level is only what we can see here. Major level design considerations for Zombie Toys then are twofold. First, we need to provide some cover for the player, and this is done through the props that are positioned strategically around the floor. This will allow the player, for example, to duck around the blocks or the train and run from the zombies. Additionally, we need in our level design to have concealment points for our spawn points, and these are marked here in the plan. The Zombunny, Clown, Duck, and Elephant spawn points are shown in green circles, and rather than have them simply appear out of thin air, we've strategically placed objects so that they can spawn behind things and issue out into the main game space. Level design, then, is sometimes done in a sketch such as this, and often evolves in the editor. What that means is that we may have a good idea of where we want things in general, but as we get into the editor and view things in the context of our controller, we'll fine-tune our level design, really polishing it and making sure that it supports that core mechanic or mechanics of our game.